So who can benefit from this seminar? Well, for sure, if you are a business owner or leader or an influencer about what to do next, this seminar can help you understand business analytics better. But you also might want to be somebody who just wants a better footing at what these concepts are all about and what business analytics is. And this can come in really handy if you're sitting and listening to someone who's pitching analytic services to you. You can challenge them, you can ask questions back, and in general, maybe you can sound like you know what you're talking about. So let's shift gears a little bit and let's talk about the levels of analytics. There are 4. The first one is descriptive. And descriptive analytics is basically about what happened. It always looks to the past, and the past basically started 1 second ago. It's the most basic level, so it mostly uses percent changes, totals, and averages. But it can involve really cool things like clustering. Clustering can identify how you can group people by traits that they have in common. And sometimes those traits are not really what you'd expect. And for example, they can also identify what products those customers who are in the same cluster tend to purchase together, right? And if you're a retailer, that's really valuable information to know. And you can bet your bottom dollar that Walmart and Target do a lot of this stuff. There's actually a really interesting story that goes along with this, and it's kind of memorable. In 1992, a company called Teradata was hired by the Osco drugstore chain to do some market basket analysis. And market basket is essentially what people buy together at the same time, what they have in their basket when they show up to the cash register. And they found that between 5 p.m. and 7 p.m., customers, whatever else they buy, they tend to buy 2 things together. And what are those 2 things? Those things are beer and diapers, right? Now, I can kind of draw a line of sight between those 2 things, right? Right. However, unlike the pancake mix and the syrup, I haven't seen the diaper stored in the beer aisle at the grocery store. Although I haven't checked out Chardonnay. Maybe there's something there. All right, so the next one is Diagnostic Analytics. And Diagnostic Analytics is all about why. It's the why behind the what. And basically, to me, it just extends descriptive analytics by continuing to ask why. The trick with diagnostic and descriptive analytics especially is to understand the type of associative relationships at play. As we know, there's a bunch of different kinds of relationships. There's a causal relationship, directly connected. There's a correlational relationship with some effect of some magnitude. And then there's no relationship at all, just purely by chance. So again, there's lots of material that will help you distinguish between these types of relationships, and a good data analyst or a data scientist will be really, really concerned with that. Okay, next is predictive analytics. And that's all about what will happen next. And predictive analytics is probably what you hear about mostly because it's really cool. So predictive analytics does this by identifying past patterns and understanding how well they describe the future. And they include measures for both the likelihood and the proportionality of the predicted outcome. And I'll give you an example. So say I'm a data analyst and I'm working for Big Machine Records. And Big Machine Records is the company that produces Taylor Swift's albums. And my boss has asked me to help inform the marketing department about how they should promote Taylor's new album. So what do? Well, I get as much information as I can about the people who've purchased Taylor's album in the past. And I can get that by records of electronic transactions. And then what I do is I try to identify those folks and match them with other data that I purchase, such as age and residence and whether they own or rent their home and how many people in the household and all sorts of stuff. And that data is available. There's companies that do nothing but acquire that data and they sell it to other companies. And so at the end of the day, I have sort of these purchase records, and I have maybe 50 other data elements that describe those people. And what I try and do is find patterns in those data elements, tying them to the people to understand what is the predictive value and how can I tell about the future. Now, so say let me make sure I get this right. Right. So say I do my analysis. Now, the likelihood measure is whether or not the associations that I'm drawing between those 50 data elements and my customers are real or purely the result of chance, right? The proportionality is to what extent the findings that I have represent the entire range of the market. So here's an example. So I do my analysis and I run in to my boss's office and I say, boss, I can predict with a very high certainty about who's going to buy Taylor's next album. And my boss says, great, tell me. I say, all right, it is females between the ages of 13 and 16. And my boss looks at me and says, teenage girls, Paul, really? We know that that's Taylor's core market. What I want to know, my boss says, is I want to know about females 29 to 40 years old who live in households where no one is younger than 18. Oh, yeah, that would be good. So I go back to my office and I keep working. So the point is that I had a very good sense of likelihood in identifying those teenage girls as purchasers of Taylor's album, but the proportionality of my analysis was so narrow that overall it really wasn't worth very much. Now, when you do predictive analytics, the results can be in just a big set of data. It can be in a graph or other visualization, but it also can be in these analytic models that I'm talking about. So an analytic model is basically, it is a mathematical expression that I've fed data into and sort of brought it to life. And that process is called training the algorithm or training the model. And once that's done, I can take that model and then basically package it and then use it over and over again, feeding lots of new data in periodically, and get a set of predictions. And that's kind of a big element of the value of analytics, is producing those models. It's important to tune those models over time to ensure that they stay relevant. But that's what predictive analytics really is all about. Now, the fourth kind is prescriptive analytics. How can we make it happen? Now, prescriptive analytics basically provides guidance on taking a specific course of action on multiple decisions in order. Usually it is presented as simulations with a variety of pathways and decision points, and then different outcomes based on the various combination of decisions that you made. In our Taylor Swift example, you could use prescriptive analytics to help guide adjustments in ad spending over, say, a 6-month marketing campaign after her new album is released, depending on how are sales going, where are we soft, where are we strong. Another really, really good example is in medicine. Folks who have long-term diseases like asthma or diabetes or COPD or hypertension, or especially if you have more than one of those conditions, are sometimes really complex to treat over the long term. There's all the clinical data about their tests and their doctor's notes, but there's also lots of data about their lifestyle, right? What's their home environment like? How much exercise do they get? What's their age? Do they smoke? And all sorts of stuff like that. So what a prescriptive analytic model can do is it can be created using historic data on patients with one or more of those conditions. And because it's in the past, we know about their outcomes, right? Did they have to go to the hospital a lot, or did they have a lot of emergency room visits? And then once that model is trained, a clinician can put data in for a new patient, and we can learn more about what their outcomes might be, and we can then apply different options for treatment and see how we might adjust those outcomes. And based on that information then, the clinician, maybe a nurse, can advise the doctor or the pharmacist or the patient about changes in their treatment regimen. So we made it through the level of sophistication, and I have good news for you. Oh, I forgot about this part. There are 2 axes on these levels. One is value and one is complexity. Descriptive analytics is at the lowest end, and prescriptive is at the highest, both in terms of the complexity to do it and the value that you can get from it. And as we move up that level, we go from hindsight, understanding what happened in the past, to insight, understanding why, to foresight, understanding what's going to happen.